Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/usingyourpower. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Today we would like to recommend Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. What the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not.
Welcome to Using Your Power. I'm David Andrew Wiebe, and joining me today is
Maveen, Kaura.
How's it going, Mav?
I'm doing good, man. How are you today?
I'm powered up.
Yeah, how come?
I'm powered up for another great episode. You know, I've had a really great time with working out and eating well and just living a more productive life in the last little while, and that's been really good for my health overall and my mindset and my energy levels and all that kind of stuff. So it's been great.
Right on. Looks like some of those things that we started maybe about 3 months ago in January, have started paying off for you.
Yeah, exactly. And doing a lot of things to move my business forward too, and investing more into one or two strategies as opposed to being so spread out across many different tactics and social platforms and all that kind of stuff. You can get easily caught up in all that kind of stuff, thinking it's going to get you some kind of results. But I think you almost just have to go all into one or two and make it happen. And that's what's been going on.
I agree, and it's been great working with yourself as well, right? So we've been able to get some stuff done. We're obviously putting some stuff together for usingyourpower.com as people can obviously see some of the changes that have come from our first episode all the way to this episode here, right? So
exactly.
It's been awesome, and I know you've been able to help me with discoveryourlife.com as well, or discoveryourlifetoday.com, I should say, sorry, where we're also be able to implement a lot of the same things that we're doing here at usingyourpower.com and just kind of taking the same type of format and putting it there as well as on your own site too, right? The Music Entrepreneur HQ.
Exactly. Yeah. Lots of forward progress there. It takes time to do everything. Adding in images from when I transferred my site from dotcast.com to musicentrepreneur.hq.com, correcting links, all that kind of stuff you have to do once you've moved over your site. So it takes time to do all that. But over time, SEO is a long-term strategy anyway. So if you just keep at it and keep doing the right things, your site improves over time. And that's kind of the things Google's looking for anyway, is, good content, good images. So you just keep at it. And even if you're working alone, it can get done as long as you break it down into smaller pieces.
Right. And so Google's not necessarily looking for just those quick, hot, keywords for one day. They're looking for something long term where people can keep coming back to over and over a long period of time, and then be able to get really good information from the content that people are putting out, like ourselves as well, right? So probably some of our listeners are wondering why we're talking about our websites and time as well, right? So it kind of makes sense. We are going to be talking about time and money and the value of it.
That's right. I think it's a really important subject, and I guess to kind of lead into it, I've had conversations with friends, and probably everyone listening has maybe even said some of these things to other people. Well, I would love to get together, but I have no money. I've got the time, but no money. There's a lot of different ways of saying it. Usually it's kind of pointing to the same problem, or oftentimes, it's pointing to the same problem, whether you have no time, no money, no time, however you want to say it. Oftentimes it's actually exactly the same problem. But that's why I felt it was like really important to bring that up and address it and talk about it, because I think a lot of people need help in this area in their mindset and thinking, and hopefully we can add some value to you in that way.
Absolutely. So one of the things you're saying is, I think there's a need to really understand what time is, what money is, and how they kind of work together is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's funny. One of the first things I wrote down when we were putting our notes together was, where do we spend our time? And second is, where do we actually spend our money? Right. And I think we need to look at those individually to really understand what that means, because obviously if you're spending all your time doing certain things, you might be also spending your money doing those certain things as well. Or if you're spending your whole bunch of money doing one thing, you may not have enough time to do other things that you really want to do, right? So I'd love to start maybe looking at that and look at where do people spend a lot of their time potentially.
Absolutely. I think we should definitely delve into that. Maybe I'll just set it up by saying these few things, which is that a lot of people have time but no money. So that would describe someone that's between work, someone that doesn't know how to manage their finances. There's a lot of people that say, I have money but no time. That's someone who has probably a demanding career or someone that's driving towards a bigger goal. And then there's people that have no time and no money. And that's usually someone that's looking for work or someone that has a job that isn't keeping pace with their lifestyle that they've chosen for themselves. And very few people have an abundance of time and money. So that's someone that would live off of their assets, businesses, properties, investments, and things like that. So I think that sets it up. And Maveen, let's delve right into that.
Absolutely. I like the first one too. Lots of time, but no money. And I think a lot of times people have, we all have the same amount of time in a day. We got 24 hours in a day. I forgot exactly how many seconds that was in a day. But, we all have the exact same amount of time. And absolutely, we have to spend some of that time sleeping. Yeah. We do need to rest our minds, our bodies in order to, have the right energy to do the things that we want to do with that time as well, right? So, but on an occasional, a normal day usually pretty much looks like getting up for people, getting ready to either go to work or work in your home-based business or work in your maybe your business, like you always talk about too, right? As Robert Kiyosaki talks about, depending on which quadrant you come from, are you in the I quadrant, are you in the S quadrant, are you in the B quadrant, or in the employee quadrant, right? So it's going to really depend on where you are, but we're all going to get up in the morning and go to one of those areas to start working, right? So
exactly. Something really great that I've been doing here in the new year here is on Fridays, I'll just take about 6 or 7 hours of downtime, or just a period where I go dark and I'm not really alive to the world. I'll go and enjoy something that I enjoy eating at a place that I maybe wouldn't always eat at, because really financially that's totally not a problem for me to eat out here and there, especially if it's planned and it's like weekly and only happens once. And then I'll spend the rest of the day just like reading and planning and thinking about what's happening next in my freelancing life as well as my business. So that's something that's been really, really good for me to do, and something that both in terms of priorities, having that downtime is really good for me to recharge. And in terms of money, I have the money to be able to do that, and it doesn't have to cost me an arm or leg to do that either. It's not like I'm missing out on huge opportunities. I'm actually sharpening the axe for the following week by recharging and taking the time to do that. So that's a practice that's been really good for me.
I like what you said about that, sitting down and charging and sharpening the axe, right? Where a lot of people, unfortunately, because there's so much going on during the first 5 days of the week, Monday to Friday, unfortunately use the weekends not to sit down and sharpen that axe. They actually have to, that's when they have 2 days now to get everything done.
That's right.
And they kind of don't have the time to sit down and, recharge and re-energize so they can get Monday the next week to kind of, start fresh and no stress. But instead they're, most people, because, they spend their time after work not necessarily being productive all the time, and now I'm not necessarily trying to put anybody down or say anything bad against anybody. I know I've been an employee where I used to come home sometimes and I'd come, cook dinner and then I'd sit down and watch TV for a couple hours. And, I found that was never productive for myself. So now I obviously have changed those habits as well, right?
Yeah. And Maveen, you brought up cash flow quadrant. Obviously, that was on the list of my notes to talk about as well. And maybe we'll just define those real quickly, even if maybe most of our listeners are familiar with it, but some may not be. E would be, there's 4 of them. There's E, S, B, and I. E would be for employee. S is for self-employed or specialist. It could also be solopreneur. B is for business owner, and then I is for investor. And you're exactly right. I really like how you described that. Your priorities around time and money tend to revolve around which quadrant you fall under. A lot of people don't know that's financial literacy, that there's 4 ways of making money. Do you want to add to that?
I think you said it right. I mean, most people typically start off as an employee, I think.
That's right.
Of somewhere, right? I mean, at 16, 17, maybe even 15, you're out there, you get your first job, you start off as an employee, and you think that's kind of the way life should be. And that's kind of what we're taught in school as well, right? Take your time, go to school, get really good at it, and then go out, find a job, and then spend that 9 to 5 at work, just developing your skills so you can make some money, right? As you maybe get out of that employee mindset, a lot of people typically move to self-employed, right? Not necessarily entrepreneurial self-employed. They might look at maybe starting a business, maybe being some sort of a professional, so where they can contract themselves out,
consultant, freelancer.
Exactly.
I hear this is actually really on the rise right now. So it's not just me out in the world doing this anymore, kind of working from home completely and serving different clients. There's more and more people. That's a huge growth area right now.
No, you're right. And I actually read an article, David, about a couple months back, and they were talking about, because, they say that we still are in a recession right now, and at least at the time of us recording this, they say that a lot of people who are in their 20s right now are not necessarily looking to work. They're looking to start their own home-based businesses and looking to be self-employed, right? So there's going to be something to be said about that in the coming future, when a lot of people are not necessarily wanting to go to work for somebody else. They want to work for themselves, right? And that's kind of leads us into the B quadrant of being business owners, right? Again, it depends on if you're a business owner of a franchise. A lot of people think that's probably the best way to go, but I think more and more, as you're saying, is being a freelance writer and working for yourself and being your own boss. You're your own employee as well, and you kind of take care of everything. Go ahead.
Well, at the same time, I'm actually looking for better leverage on my time, because you can only write so many posts in a year. I think I figured out that if I cut out everything else in my life and didn't do music and didn't do a few other things, social events, shows, things like that, which I'm passionate about and enjoy doing, then I could maybe make early 6 figures as a freelance writer, like somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000. But that's not really great leverage of my time, because now I have absolutely no time. I just have a whole ton of money, right? And no way to spend it. And my days would be filled with just freelance technical writing. And my entire focus would be around finding higher paying clients so that I could make more money. Not saying that's a bad thing to aspire to. I know that there's other freelance writers that have done that. They made it their goal for the year to go and make 6 figures in freelance writing. That's awesome. And, I've discovered that you can probably do it in just about anything. You can do it in music instruction as a piano instructor or a singer. Any kind of freelancing thing definitely has the potential to be a 6-figure business. But then you have to think about, well, is that the best use of my time? Because that's not entrepreneurship to me. Entrepreneurship to me is leveraging people and money to grow your wealth.
Absolutely. And that's going to be down a little bit further. I think we'll definitely get into that when we start talking about the abundance of time and money,
right,
and finding ways to leverage yourself. I think that makes absolute sense. But as we start looking at the 4th quadrant as being an investor right now, again, as we all know, not everybody is great at investing, because, the markets change so quick. Oil is up one day and the markets go up. The oil goes down, the markets go down, right? There's a war starting somewhere, the markets go up or down. Gold changes. I mean, we can't control this. Then we look at technology, science, and all that really does impact where stocks go. So a lot of people don't have the know-how or mindset to really understand how everything works. I mean, we all have heard of like Warren Buffett and stuff, who are some of the people out there. But even, entrepreneurs like Tony Robbins, for example, he has a personal investor that helps him with his own money, right? He's not looking to be the smartest person about investing. He goes out and finds the right guy to help him grow his wealth based on what he's been able to do, right? So he's not necessarily working in that quadrant. He's sticking to what he's really good at. And then, like you said, hiring the right people to help him in places that he needs help with.
Exactly. And even I heard Tim Ferriss say this recently on a podcast. I think it was the interview with James Altucher. He was saying that he no longer wanted to spend as much time as he was doing startup investing. In fact, I think he kind of said, I'm not doing that anymore completely, because he was confronted with this idea of leaving a legacy or creating more value in the world to help people, which is why he wrote, his fourth book or whatever, which in every podcast interview, he seems to say writing is such a painful, difficult, long, arduous, tedious process. But yeah, I mean, if you look at his latest book, which is over 700 words, I was showing that to Mav earlier.
Almost 700 pages.
700 pages, sorry.
700 words would really be too long, wouldn't it?
No, that would be a short book. 700 pages. I mean, okay, so, maybe he's reprioritized himself. It's not just to think in terms of how much money I can make, because we could all set up our lives to make more money. Money is available in abundance, and there are a ton of different opportunities to get it. Arguably, you should get into something that you can excel at and be good at. But, that's another factor that we often have to consider with time and money, is like, well, how am I going to leave my legacy? And I also heard this on a podcast recently, which was that, the things that bring long-term happiness are not things that bring us happiness in the short term. Like watching TV, that might be fun. Going and having ice cream and eating McDonald's, that might taste good and feel good for a while. But that doesn't bring you long-term happiness. Long-term happiness inevitably is like spending time working out, writing a book, creating a website or a blog, creating an album of music. All those kinds of long-term things tend to stimulate a different sense of happiness and fulfillment within us.
Right, and I think that goes right back to the same question that I asked at the starting, right? Where do we spend our time? What are we doing with our time? Like I said, we have 24 hours in a day. We all get the exact same amount of time. How are we utilizing it? Are we sitting in front of the TV and, kind of watching, 3 hours of, say sports or television programming that, that you may enjoy in the short term, but again, doesn't add any real long-term value. Maybe you're, sometimes I do it as well. I jump on, maybe watch a show and, you go on Twitter and you kind of interact with people, but that's more of a game plan that I use just to be able to, connect to people, right? It's not necessarily a way to just, send out tweets and waste my time watching TV. It's really for me to, be able to connect to people. So it's a very systematic on the reason I do that, but I don't necessarily sit there 3 hours watch or 6 hours watch back-to-back football on Sundays, for example. I try to use my time on Sundays as a way to be more productive for the new coming week, especially with the goals that I've set for 2017, right? They're pretty out there right now, and we're obviously, we both have segments on our separate websites where we're doing weekly updates on our stuff, so it's kind of neat, and people can really see how we're going towards those goals by using our time effectively.
Absolutely. And I think, Maveen, you would agree, this whole writing process, I mean, it's not that it's not enjoyable. And I love writing content for my own website. And sometimes I do enjoy writing for clients too. But some of that work can also be pretty tedious at times. That's why I get paid to do it, because I'm solving their problem, obviously. But I think you'll agree, writing a book or a blog post in the short term, you could just as easily go and binge watch Netflix, but you're choosing to do something to invest in your long-term game plan, and I think that's what's great about it.
Absolutely, and that time you spend writing, right? I mean, typically, I remember when I first started writing a couple of years ago, when I first talked to you, you just said start writing, and I said, well, how long would you recommend, a post being? Like, well, I'll go over at least 1,000 words, and and nowadays it's hard to stay under 1,000 words. It's true. It's hard to stay under 1,500 words at most times, right? Now it's like anywhere between 15 and 2,000 are very easy to do, and it's not, it does take a little bit of time and effort to put the thought process into what you want to write about. But I mean, it's very easy to expand on that. And the more you keep writing, the more I keep writing, I find, I want to spend more time writing versus watching TV. Now, don't get me wrong, because I know I've watched some Netflix shows, you've watched some Netflix shows, and we did our episode on I'm Not Your Guru by Tony Robbins because of that, right? So we did use our time to educate ourselves, but then we used that and turned it around and turned it into a podcast that we could then bring it out to the people and have them listen to it.
That's true. I actually used to turn my entertainment into work for myself too, because I would play a video game or watch a movie and then turn around and review that video game or movie that I had just watched or played. And so, I was looking to monetize that site, and it never really kind of took off the way I'd hoped. But, there's a lot of critics out there. There's a lot of video game coverage, movie news, media news out there. So, of course, it's a competitive niche to get into, but it was something fun to do for a while. And I think I learned a lot from that as well.
Right. So I guess the next question that we have to ask is, where do most people spend their money? I mean, we kind of starting to understand where people are spending their time. So where are people spending their money now? If they're saying, they have lots of time and no money, or too much time or lots of money but no time. So what are they really doing, right? And I guess in the end, we're going to have to discuss how do you get that balance, and then again, of course, how do you move to the next step of abundance?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that definitions, right? We have to think about the personal profile of what that person is. So if they're saying they have no time, or sorry, if they're saying they have lots of time but no money, that's because they're between work, so they don't have any work right now, or because they don't know how to properly manage their finances, which can also be another problem entirely. But as far as like where they're spending their money, I think we all have certain expenses that tend to be fairly universal or consistent across the board. Things like, maintaining your car, gasoline, rent, or mortgage if you have some kind of mortgage payment, food, insurance. These are kind of all the basics taxes too. Those are all the kind of the basics that everybody has to pay. And to some extent, that's why, money can be a problem, because you have to account for those ongoing expenses, or you could find yourself in trouble and unable to keep up with everything.
Right. And, I think we do have to also look at where your money is being spent. And the easiest way to do that is definitely look at your checkbook, right? If you can, and I mean checkbook because not everybody uses checks. So, I mean, really is what I'm trying to say is you look at your bank statement. If you start seeing that, using the ATM, for example, quite a bit, it's a way to lose a lot of money, especially if that ATM charges costing you every time, right? So you may not look at these little things and say, but every time you use a different, ATM, it's costing, let's say, for example, $1 to use somebody else's ATM. Well, after a month, a lot of people are spending, $20, $30 on it, and that extra $20, $30 you can take and put it back into your business, or you can go up for that, Burger Fridays that you do, right? Kind of stuff like that. So it is something that you can utilize that time, that money in order to then, treat yourself realistically. And it's a small change if you just kind of are aware of what you're doing with your money.
Definitely. I think banking fees and debt are two categories that could probably go in most people's expense column as well. The way you said it is perfect. I think maybe just looking, I think we even gave that tip before about look into whatever bank account you happen to be using and see if you can reduce fees. For example, see if you can transition over to an unlimited fee checking account or something like that. That's kind of, or unlimited transaction bank account, which is kind of what I have. I still pay, I don't know, it's something like $15 monthly or something like that to the fees, but then at least the fees are predictable and they're not all over the place, and it's great. I mean, this is one of the tips that you gave, Mav, which was not to pay in so many different ways. Now, don't go around paying for everything with cash, with debit, with credit, with every possible means you have. Just limit it to one, and that way you can track your money much easier.
Right. And again, just another quick tip again is, I don't use my credit card. Sorry, I don't use my debit card for anything. I don't usually use cash for anything, because if I use cash, I'm going to typically end up spending it because I'm taking out a couple $100, and it's hard to, keep $100 bill in your pocket without breaking it and spending it all, using my credit card or debit card, for that exact reason, because anywhere I go to pull out money, it's going to cost me. It's going to, every time I swipe, it cost me as well, right? I use only my credit card. I don't use those other two. Again, you have to be really good at paying off your debit card or your credit card at the end of each month. Now, if you're not paying off that credit card, then your money you have to start paying interest on that money, again, which is another topic I know we're going to cover in the future here. But you don't want to pay interest on that money, because now it could be more than what those fees at the bank would be, right? So you got to be very cognitive of where you're spending that money, how much you're being charged, right? So myself, I pay off my credit card at the end of each month. I make sure every 2 weeks I'm putting more money on that credit card to make sure I'm keeping that balance low, from every paycheck that I do get, right? And that way I'm always ahead of the game, never behind, right? So that's how I usually like to play, and that's the way I've never really missed a payment ever. I've never had to pay any interest, and I'm borrowing money for free, and I'll put that in quotations, for up to 30 days before I have to make a payment, right? So it really does give me the advantage, as long as I'm able to manipulate it for my own advantage. And I think anybody can do that too once you learn how to do it properly.
I think that's really important to have some kind of emergency fund. If you just take a percentage of your income and put it aside every month, Tony Robbins advises anywhere from 3 months if you're a little more, less risk averse, all the way over to possibly 6 or even 9 months of expenses saved up. Most people go 9 months. That's crazy. Well, but some people need those 9 months to feel like they're secure. And another reason that's really important is because something like medical expenses, this isn't necessarily ongoing for all of us, but at some points in our lives, usually we end up having to spend money on our health, which one of my theme words for the year is health. So I've already spent money into omega-3s and vitamin D and stuff like that, so that I can stay healthy and be energetic and feel well, and make sure I'm exercising and make sure I'm eating well and organizing my life around those activities, so that I an ounce of prevention is, or I don't know, I don't remember the exact saying, but
prevention is definitely the key to health, right?
Right, exactly. So, but some people will have those ongoing medical expenses because they have certain conditions. I know I have friends like that with some difficulties in that area. And again, even there, I'd say the emergency fund comes in very necessary and helpful, because if you have a body that's prone to cancer, for example, you're going to need ongoing cancer treatments. That's tough, and it is very difficult, and it's unfortunate, but you're going to need some money to be able to deal with it, or else you're just going to be treading water a lot.
Right. It kind of goes to a conversation myself and yourself had off of mic, obviously, is, I mentioned to you, we're going to spend our money somewhere, right? So as an example, $40 a month or $100 a month, whatever your medication costs, you're going to spend it each month if you are sick. So why not spend that same money in the prevention is kind of what I think you're trying to get to, right? Yeah.
So, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think that's how you say it.
I think it's right. But I think, if we take care of ourselves now, right? I think I was telling you, I'm not sure if we've mentioned it on the show, but about 6 to 8 months ago, I went to David Wolf here in Calgary, right? And that's kind of what he's been on, right? He's talking about prevention and taking, supplements, not just vitamin supplements, but herbal supplements, to heal your body, to do different things and grow your immune system so it doesn't break down because of all the environmental factors as well, right? So taking that money and spending it on your health is definitely more important than having to spend your money down the road on pharmaceuticals.
Detoxing, alkalizing, just doing the right things to make sure that your body is in good working order. Because I don't accept that you just have to live with all these pains and creaks and all those things that are supposed to happen with age. I mean, for certain, to a degree, your body breaks down over time. But I think if you take good care of it, you'll be able to enjoy this life much longer and be able to be in good health for that time.
I agree. And, I think with a healthy body, that does come with some money for sure. It also comes with time. And it's kind of you do need a little bit of both, right? You do need the money to buy the products in order to take care of yourself. You do need the money to do it as well, right? So when you have that, you can have that happiness in your life. You can find that peace of mind within yourself. And you can find that quality of life, like I think you're saying as well, David, that I think that you will enjoy, right? Because obviously the less sick you can be, the less times you can spend in the hospital or on medication, the happier you are and more active you are, you'll also feel that as well.
Something Ralph Smart always says, and this is maybe going a little bit deeper, but like health is wealth, and health or wealth is in nature, because what is money made out of? Trees. So wealth is in nature. Interesting. Very, meditate on it. Think of it. If it doesn't come to you right away, it'll come to you later.
I love that. And it's funny that you said that. It's true, I believe, because I love meditating. I recently restarted meditating back in January, and I've been keeping up with my meditation, and and I love going to nature as well. And that's something that myself and yourself have done. We've said, hey, let's take a day off today. What are you doing? Maybe I'm stressed at home, and maybe I know you need a little time away from the office here. I give you a call and say, hey, let's get out of here for a bit, and we'll go out and we'll just go for a nice walk. We got tons of provincial parks around Calgary, which is really nice, really close to where we live. And we get around the trees. There's nice little creeks going through there. We're so close to the mountains here as well, where we can literally see them. It almost feels like you can touch them from where we are sometimes. But it's just nice to get out there. You see animals and you get around the birds and you hear the sounds, and it has got that calming effect as well, right? Just like you're saying.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what Food Friday is all about for me. Like, I can even go into somewhere like Canmore or Banff if I really want to, or I can just go within the city. But I'm not stressed about it because that's my downtime. So I know Friday traffic can sometimes be crazy in Calgary, but I'll just enjoy my drive over, take a lesser taken route so that I don't run into a ton of traffic, sit down and have a nice lunch. So that's something that I've enjoyed lots as well.
All right. So should we move on to the next point you have there?
Yeah, what I wanted to talk about real quick was assets, because I know I brought it up when I said that very few people have an abundance of time and money, all the time and money in the world to do whatever they want. It's usually someone that lives off of their assets. And so I just wanted to define a few different ones, and maybe this will give you some idea of your own wealth creation too, right? Because we talked about ESBI. Some people actually, I guess Eben Pagan describes it as a ladder. So even though Robert Kiyosaki says this is the cash flow quadrant, and here's the left side and here's the right side, the side that you want to be on is the right side because that's where the B and the I lives. But Eben Pagan, I found this was helpful, described it as a ladder. You can go from employment, promote yourself to self-employment as you figure out how to make money. And then as you figure out self-employment, you can then teach others how to do the things that you're doing to become a business owner. And then finally, as you learn the ins and outs of business, you can become an investor. So I thought that was a great insight, and I would share that. But the different kinds of assets include businesses. That's a company or multiple companies that don't require your constant involvement. So that's the true definition of entrepreneurship. We throw around that term a lot these days, don't we, Mav?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like, but the true definition is lost on people, because that's actually where you live off of that asset and you don't have to do anything in your business, or at least you don't have to do a lot in your business to keep it going.
One of the things that I've always thought about is, how do the wealthy get wealthier, right? And I find that they live off the interest their assets produce, right? They don't spend their money, they spend the money that their money makes. And I think if we put ourselves into that kind of mindset, we can really start understanding how to build not just wealth, but also assets that can create that wealth for a more comfortable life that gives you the time and money down the road.
That's a great point. The next type of asset is investments. This could be things like bonds, stocks, mutual funds, options, futures, forex, gold. You can see that I've really done my research here. Real estate, even domain names or websites, which is kind of the realm that we're in here as using your power. Those can all be forms of investments that can pay off over the long haul. You've heard James Schramko talk about taking a $300 domain and turning it into a multi-million-dollar business. It's entirely possible. It's just you have to have that long-term thinking to think about where those investments are going to lead. Most people just bail on mutual funds the moment they see that cash go down, and then they get out of it. But if they had waited a few more months, a few more years, sometimes that mutual fund would have gone back up and they would have been able to make some money on it. So long-term thinking is needed in investments, which is why I think it's good to think of this as a ladder. Build your ability as a business owner, and then you'll be able to understand investments better.
Right. No. And again, you have to really understand the investments you're putting your money into as well, right? So definitely find somebody that can teach you how to make money with your money, and just, don't just look at the people at the banks, because again, the banks are looking just to make money for themselves when you invest with them, right? So definitely, find people who are obviously they're in the business of making money as well. And we all know stocks go up, stocks go down, mutual funds do the exact same thing. Gold goes up one day, gold goes down. But if you really understand how to play the game, the more and more I hear of it, it's a game. And I listen to Robert Kiyosaki, his radio show that he has as well, and he says the exact same. Money, he doesn't really want money anymore, not in the sense that he's looking to get more money. He looks at money as a game, and he's like, I just play the game, and in the game I make more money. So it depends on how you look at it. And again, I like the idea of real estate. That's one of the things that I like myself. We got a couple of rentals, me, my wife and myself, and we like that idea of, one of the things I always heard is they're not making any more land, right? So the more land you have the options of holding on to, the more ability you have down the road of maybe selling it for a much higher price, especially in a city like Calgary. A couple of years ago, land prices had just skyrocketed. At one point, within a short span of a couple of months, land prices had gone up between $60,000 and $100,000. And that's huge, right? For anybody who was holding on to some land, depending on how many acres you're holding on to, you could have definitely made some good money if that's the time you had chosen to sell.
I like that. Yeah. Land ownership is pretty huge too. And on that point, I do recommend Tony Robbins' Money Master the Game. It's a pretty good book. I would suggest going beyond the book to learn more about investments and that kind of stuff, because that alone may not we're always facing risks when it comes to investments. Nothing is 100%. Even Warren Buffett doesn't bat 1,000 in investments. So we have to be aware of that when we get into it. And again, we're not accountants or financial advisors or anything like that. So do your homework and get proper help if that's something you want to do. And then I guess you're really leading into the next point. You already said land, but the third type of asset I wanted to mention was property. So, in land, there's really no money unless you rent it or sell it in some way. And then once you sell it, it's not an ongoing asset. It's just a one-time cash flow that you can create. You can have apartments or rental properties, intellectual property, which is kind of fun for me because that includes books, music, theatrical plays, trademarks, patents, industrial designs, trade secrets, confidential information, layout designs, or integrated circuits. And those are just a few different examples. There's many more types of investments and property that you can own, but intellectual property is a cool one because I make music, I write books, and there's opportunity to expand into more things as time goes on.
Right. And I do like the idea of, the intellectual property, because even anything that you blog on your website is your intellectual property as well, right? So, just flipping through the Tim Ferriss book as well, The Tools of the Titans there.
Yeah.
It looks like a lot of what he's done, he's taken episodes that he's done on, his website and conversations he's had with different people and turned that, intellectual property into now a book that he's able to sell on the store shelves or through Amazon or wherever as well. So he's been able to, utilize that, and find a different way to make money with it as well.
There's certain questions that he asks every guest on every show. So that's probably part of the way he's able to repurpose it and turn it into the book, which is smart. That's just, good foresight. I wanted to talk about 2 intangible assets. These are things that have value for sure, but may not produce money ongoing in a sense. One is databases. Databases are, like databases of customers, databases of like vendors and relationships you have with other companies. Relationships often lead to new opportunities. So it's often said it's more about who you know than what you know. And oftentimes that is true, or at least it's good to be aware that, there is value in or it's also been said there's, your net worth is in your network. So there's value in databases. I would also say relationships, obviously. And then finally, authority. Authority can be built over time by publishing podcast episodes, blog posts, articles, PDFs, books, all those kinds of things. Speaking engagements, making guest appearances can build your authority over time. And as your authority builds, more people want to work with you, more people know you, and then you're able to command a higher price for your products.
Yeah. I just want to go right back to what you said about databases. I do love that point, right? Because as any good salesperson knows, right, you want to utilize the database you have, and then you want to be able to utilize the database of the customer you have. So a good salesperson knows they're going to network with the person properly, they're going to service the person, they're going to sell their product, and then they're going to ask for a referral. When you ask for that referral, now you're tapping into the database of your client, and that client there can have hundreds of great people that you can possibly work with as well in the future, right? But again, it all comes by building that trust and taking that time to build a trust and build that relationship properly, and not focusing on the money only, because obviously if we take care of our customers on the back end, the money will come in as well, right? So I just wanted to kind of add to that because I love that point.
Another way of looking at assets is anything that you would find value in and others would find value in. So if others don't find value in it, it's probably not an asset, but something like a database, absolutely. Others would find value in it because let's say, for example, you have a blog on skateboarding and you've built your list of email subscribers over time. Well, somebody else in the skateboard industry would like to talk to that audience too, or might want to be able to do that. So they would see value in your list and might approach you to buy it, or might look for a way to collaborate with you to get in front of your audience.
Right. And the idea of collecting emails, I love that idea because that's something that we do on usingyourpower.com as well. And it's able to, one, connect to our audience, you, the listener, right? And second is to be able to tell you about products and services that we do have coming down the pipe, because, those products and services are stuff that our database of people, which is through our email subscribers, wants to wants that information, wants maybe something additional, not just the free content that we're putting out. They're looking for something over and above, because they do see value in what we're providing, and being able to then connect to those people that are wanting some additional information. We're able to then provide that because of the database that our listeners are allowing us to build.
I think that's something a lot of companies have discovered, is that there is money in the list, and you can get a higher engagement rate and open rate and buy rate if you talk to that audience and build the relationship with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you have what's your next point, Matt?
Well, it's, I don't want to get too, I don't know if we're letting you get far off this topic, or are we going to try to stay on this topic right now a little bit?
I was just going to talk about increasing your income opportunities. That was my last point, but
sure. No, go into that, because I think once you go into that, you actually start getting into some of the stuff that I start talking about.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think anybody that's listened to this point might be thinking about, okay, so how do I make more money? And I just wanted to point you to some episodes already where we've talked pretty significantly about different opportunities that pretty much anybody can get into, or at least ones that are not hard for you to begin even today. In episode 2, we talked about network marketing, and that is a type of business where you can definitely learn the basics of how to build a business and also receive mentorship along the way. Doesn't mean that you'll be successful in network marketing. I mean, if you look at just the odds or the percentages of the people that actually do really well in network marketing, it's not that significant. So I'm not telling you that you won't succeed in network marketing, but what I am telling you is that it'll give you an excellent business education. In episode 9, we talked about 10 ways to make $100. In episode 10, we talked about building a network. So that's how you can start building those relationships that'll help you build your authority. In episode 11, we talked about blogging every day and how that can lead to some opportunities in terms of monetization. And of course, we may do an episode on this in the future, but freelancing can also offer some income opportunities.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I like what you said about the episodes is, even episode 8 and 11, for example, I know back in January we were looking at, just kind of what people are looking at on iTunes for what they enjoy, and at least episode 11 and number 8, which is not on here right now, but those, especially blogging every day, is actually one of our most popular when we were starting to look across the board into Canada, US, and surprisingly even Japan. And I think that has something to do with you because of your,
probably,
speaking Japanese there. So
yeah. I think blogging is a topic maybe we'll cover in more depth, because honestly, there's so much more that we could say about it beyond what we actually said in episode 11. But that's really cool to see. Episode on entitlement, I guess it's just on everybody's minds, or maybe it's Generation X or older following us and just going, those damn kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't even know what to say to that. Just is awesome. One of the things I was looking at was the way I approach this was slightly different. I love the way you have approached this. What I want to maybe look at, a lot of times people here are looking to figure out ways to save themselves time and also save themselves money as well, right? So a lot of people now, especially, I was telling you a little while ago that I went to something called the ATB Booster R here in Calgary, right? And one of the things that was to do with a lot of entrepreneurs that are, starting their own online businesses, either offering physical or non-physical products, right? So the nice thing was there too, one of the ladies that was there, she had a do-it-yourself business. And that's a lot of people are starting to get more into those do-it-yourself projects. But, I always think about it, well, why are people getting into that type of project? A lot of times it's because, they want to save some money. And obviously they want to learn something as well. But then I look at the cost of, doing it yourself and learning, which is great, but versus maybe hiring somebody and saving your time and doing something else instead, right? So, it's something that made me think, and I just maybe wanted to ask you what your thoughts on do-yourself projects was about when it comes to time and money. No,
that's something, I think you sort of hinted at some of the issues that can crop up. Let's say, for example, and I totally believe in the concept of ownership. We've talked about this probably numerous times on the podcast by now. So if you can own your entire business and keep it that way, that's the ideal. It doesn't always work that way, though. Sometimes you need investors. That's the whole startup culture. And sometimes you need partnerships. Partnerships should never be entered lightly, ever. You should definitely build the relationship with that person, make sure they have complementary skill sets, all that kind of stuff. And inevitably, you're going to be giving away a percentage, whether you decide on 50-50, 70-30, 60-40, depending on what the arrangement is. Maybe it'll even be 90-10, but the point is you're not getting to keep 100%. But there is probably a misconception around that idea of ownership that, oh, but that means I have to do everything. And a lot of creative people do have a tendency of thinking that way, that, okay, like I know how this works. I know what I'm expecting. I know the quality of work that I'm putting into this, and I don't trust other people to do it. And that can often be a mistake with DIY projects. I think you're right. If you can hire sooner rather than later is better. It's something I'm always thinking about. Is this the right time to hire? Can I hire somebody to do this? Right now, I'm just working with contractors, and that's pretty low risk and low cost overall. But what if I need someone full time? Well, that's a whole new consideration, and I have to go through an interview process and think about whether it should be someone local or should it be someone overseas. And so it's hard. Hiring is not easy. I know other entrepreneurs that are really struggling with that right now. It's like, I need to hire, but I don't know. It just seems daunting and overwhelming to be able to do. So, DIY projects often don't account for your personal time. You could build something like custom compact guitar effects pedals. Those things are really cool. Boutique guitar effects pedals. I geek out over that for sure. But
looks like you are right now.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing about those is that, now it's all your time. So yeah, you might be able to spend, sell them at a premium, maybe $100 more than the average pedal. So we'll say $200, $300. But by the time you've sold that pedal, how many hours of work has actually gone into building that? And that's something that you have to think about. Like, if you love doing it, obviously you can do it. But what if you could hire somebody to speed up that process, or hire a manufacturing plant if the demand is high for you to construct, the basics components of your pedal, and then you just finish up in your own shop, have 100 or 1,000 made up for you or whatever, and enlist the help of a manufacturer to help you with that.
Right, and I love what you're saying, because I think most people do start in the employee segment that we talked about, and then I think when you start moving into the do-it-yourself kind of arena, now you're becoming that self-employed, right? And I think a lot of times most people will go into the do-it-yourself and not really think about the time that they're spending to build their business, build a product, and I'm going to use myself as an example because that's kind of where I started, right? When I met you, I had nothing. I didn't have a website. I wasn't really into doing any of that, but I knew I wanted to, right? And when we kind of met and we started chatting, and you said, yeah, it's super easy. I'll kind of, show you a little bit of what to do. Let's meet for a coffee. And we did. And from that moment forward, a lot of it has been do it yourself for myself, right? Because I had to kind of learn, some of the background stuff. Because now I know one of the things that James Shrumko talks about on his show too is, right, what he does is he'll learn it and then he'll teach it to his team, and then his team will do it the way he needs them to do it, obviously based on their expertise as well, right? He's not going to just use his expertise. He also wants to use their expertise to get something done the way he needs it done. So yeah, I do like that concept of being able to, learn it first and then do it, right? And a lot of times I know, not necessarily talking about business, but for example, a lot of guys will tinker with their cars and stuff and whatnot, right? So I had some battery issues a couple months back, and I just kind of read up, jumped on YouTube and started reading up on it on the internet as well. Like, what can I do to fix my problem? Because I knew it was a brand new battery, and so I kind of worked through that problem. But it was learning it by myself. I could have taken the car to the garage and spent $200-$300 there. But because now I know how to do it, I can also teach you if you ever have that problem too, right, David? So it's something that I've became an expert in. At least not I'm not a mechanic by any stretch, but I can at least understand the problem now. And if someone ever else has that problem, I can also teach them how to do it themselves, or say, hey, you know what, I thought that was really hard. You may want to go see a mechanic because it's an electrical problem, as an example, right? And I wouldn't want to tell anybody to get into the electrical side of things. But when you're building your business, I think most of the times nowadays, a lot of people do start off. I do think it's a great idea. I think where you are in your side of the business to where I am, you're definitely moving into that, getting people to help you with the process part of your business. Where I'm kind of more in that starting part of my business, where some of that work is being done by me, and I'm using my own blood, sweat, and tears right now to kind of build it, learn it. Yeah, and everybody does it. You're right. And I think that's a place that a lot of us start. And as soon as you can start moving into that, one of the things I always heard, and you probably know this as well, and you've probably heard this too, is as soon as you can start paying somebody to do what you can, now you're worth as much as they are. That's something I heard, right? So the goal is definitely get to that place, and obviously it can take some time to get to it.
Another thing is that specialists kind of have the same problem. I already talked about my example of how, as a freelance technical writer, I probably could make early six figures if that's something that I oriented and organized my life completely around. Not to say that I don't work long hours already, but you could, the doctors and lawyers pretty much have the same problem. I know there's a lot of pride in that business, and I think that's good. Like, we need doctors, we need lawyers, but the problem that you run into is you can make early six figures, but now you're working 50 to 80 hour weeks. You don't have time for your relationships, for your health, your family, and a lot of other things you would love to be able to do with that money, such as vacations. I mean, some people do it in a balanced way and are able to manage their time and not overextend themselves with those professions, but there's also a lot of people that get stuck in a rut because that's day in, day out. There's a demand, there's a need, they need to be there, they need to do their work, and there's just no getting away from the office for very long.
Right. No, and I think you hit on a great point, because a lot of times, especially when you look at doctors and lawyers and you start looking at really high paid professions, you do notice also that sometimes there is a higher divorce rate in those professions as well. And not that they want to be divorced, but I think you're right that they do have to dedicate a little bit more time into their profession, because, you get out of school, you're spending, maybe $100, $200, maybe $300,000 to get educated. You get married, that's maybe another $50,000. You buy a house, that's, anywhere between $200,000 and $500,000 home. Now you got $1 million worth of debt very quick. Yeah. And, as a lawyer and a doctor, well, you got to put in those hours so you can start paying off that debt a little bit faster. Plus, living that lifestyle, because, you are somewhat trying to keep up with the Joneses, as they say, right? Because when you're making $100, $200, $300 an hour, hey, who doesn't want to spend that time and money as well, right? But then you start neglecting, your family sometimes because you're putting those 18, 19, 20-hour days in, and that can be tough too, right? So I think I love the thing that you said about having that balance, right? And I think just from what our talks that we've had, and I know I've heard it on different podcasts and read different blogs and different articles and stuff, and finding that balance for time and money online has been something that I've pursued, because I've seen the benefits of it, and obviously you've seen the benefits as well, and modeling the business kind of after what you're doing as well, and taking those great points that you've put together. And I know a couple of months back I joked with you, I'm just copying the master, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I know you're looking at other stuff, and you're also just duplicating what you're seeing out there as success, and I'm just doing the exact same thing, right? So when I think people are looking to understand time and money, I think understand how people are finding that balance and then duplicate that balance as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to not reinvent the wheel, because a business is a system to produce cash flow, nothing more, nothing less. So every time we try to apply our uniqueness and our creativity, no, you should take your originality or what's unique about you and inject it into your business. But I think you can't just reinvent the wheel around your marketing, your product, and everything else, and try to be a complete original in that area, because why would you need to change something that isn't working? And then you'll spend a lot of time on trying to figure out how to do things that may not work at all. So why reinvent the wheel, right? And that's part of the studying process and learning and seeing what's working out there for people.
Absolutely. The people that are trying to reinvent the wheel, don't try to reinvent it. Try to maybe just make it slightly better than it is. I know.
Or different.
Yeah. A lot of times that's how new products come by as well, right? The Apple iPhone 1 is really not that different from the Apple iPhone 7. The functions definitely are, but the overall concept of the phone is still one button. They haven't reinvented the wheel of their product. Yeah. They've kept it really simple, but they've just kept adding additional technology to make your phone just, great.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating against innovation in any way. I think innovation is really cool. Steve Jobs, the products that he developed, there was not necessarily a demand for them. He just realized this was something that he could put out into the world and people would enjoy. So he kind of said, people don't know what they want and I need to make it. So that was kind of his approach to creating products. But exactly, you could take something like Apple and say, okay, we're the Apple computers for a very specific subset of individuals, let's say writers or something like that. So now we produce a very specific type of computer and software and engineering around writers, and now we serve that market. So that's like not reinventing the wheel, but putting your own spin on it.
Right. No, I love that, man. I got nothing really else to add to that. So do you have any other points there, David?
I do not.
Okay, well, you know what? Neither do I.
Okay, well, I guess we can wrap up this episode then. Any other closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. Well, I think my closing thoughts on time and money really do go back to my network marketing days. Episode 2, we really talked a little bit about that and the benefits of network marketing, and maybe some pros and cons. But, I learned a lot about managing my time and money from there. I think, I did grasp a lot of concepts that I still use to this day to understand how I use that, right? And again, working at the bank really helped as well. So, understand where you're spending your time. Take a look at your calendar, write it down if you have to. See where you're spending your time. See how many hours in a day you're spending watching TV or, on social media, chit-chatting at the coffee, when you should be working instead, or, spending it on the phone with people that aren't really taking that conversation in the direction you want it to go. And then take a look at where you're spending your money as well. Kind of do the same thing. Document it, where you're spending your money, how you're spending it, on what kind of stuff you're buying. Because a lot of times we buy a bunch of material goods that, are really no good a month later or 2 months later, or we don't enjoy a couple of years later, right? So really watch where you're spending your money and how it's affecting your pocketbook, and figure out a way to find that balance. Because I love the word "the balance" you used earlier. And when you can get enough money and enough time, you will find your freedom. And it doesn't mean $1 million.
Nope.
It just means to have enough of it on a reoccurring basis, which is one of the things you mentioned, where you don't have to worry about now the stress of it coming in constantly.
I had a friend who said to me, try tracking all of your expenses, all financial transactions for 1 month, and just put it all up on a whiteboard. And I did that, and it was an incredibly valuable exercise. And I know a lot of people listening are like, nah, I don't want to do that. Come on, man. Seriously, just sit down and do it just for 1 month. I mean, if you can do it for more, great, because you can analyze further, but 1 month is enough for you to figure out a lot of things.
One of the things I maybe ask you, just so that our listeners can also understand, is like, do you mind sharing kind of what you spent your maybe the top 3 things what you actually spent your money on that you realized that was something that you didn't realize you were spending all your money there?
Actually, it turns out maybe I'd worked out a lot of things to that point, but like my money was going more or less exactly where I thought it was. But like the top 1 expenditure, I'm pretty sure, if not top 2, was debt. So I was putting a lot of money towards the debt to begin to eliminate my credit cards. It might have actually been second to rent, but I was spending quite a bit on eating out. But again, none of that was unpredictable, nor was it like, I really wish I had that money now. It was nothing like that. It wasn't excessive spending. So no major surprises for me, but I think some people might, if they do find that they're surprised by the tracking efforts and realizing things about their finances that they need to change, that they do that.
Right on.
And the main thing I hope for is just people take away is like a new mindset or a new way of thinking about money. We can't, there's only so much we can offer you in this hour. We try to pack it with as much content and much thinking as we know right now and where we are in our lives and in our experiences. But the main thing I hope is that this will change your mindset a little bit around not having enough time or not having enough money, to where you can now achieve your own version of freedom, or at least begin building towards it day by day. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Using Your Power. Find us at usingyourpower.com.
Thank you.